I'm author Karisa DeLay.
And I'm author Jamie Vendera. And today we have a special guest I'm so excited about today. This is Mr. Daniel Middleton from Scribe Freelance. And we've known each other probably almost 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere around there.
That's cool.
So we use Daniel a lot. We use him for interior design, cover design, and he's been a part of our team, like I said, for several decades. And Daniel and I have written a lot together. But before I get excited and tell everything about this,
not even let him talk. Like,
I
people are
want
like,
to
who's
hand
this
it over
Daniel
to
Middleton?
him.
He's not even talking.
So I'll let you ask him the first question, so I shut up.
Well, basically, I mean, let's talk about how you met this fool named Jamie Vendera.
Well, it's kind of foggy. I think he reached out to me. I basically was on a list, Lightning Source, their Ingram Book Group or Ingram Content Group, as they like to call themselves now. They basically had an arm, Lightning Source, and it's basically for independent publishers and small presses, things like that, even university presses. And I was on this list, and I think Jamie got hold of that list for graphic designers, book designers, interiors and covers, things like that, and he reached out to me. And basically, I was like, I think I showed him some samples of things that I've done before. And he was working with this other guy that he said the sky was bright. Let the minister work.
Yes.
So he was annoyed. And he saw some of the things that I've done, and he was impressed. And we just, we got to work on one book, and one book led to two, to many.
75?
Yeah, something like that. It's so funny because I remember, I was hoping you bring that up. I had somebody do an interior design. Fail, because you have to pass, Lightning Source. And he's like, just leave me alone. I let the master work and all that. And I got fed up, and I'm like, I'm done. And nobody could do it. And you said, yeah, I can do it. And I said, hopefully you can have it in a week. And I don't even know how you did it. It was like in a day and a half or something. Boom, you had it back, passed, got the print book ready. And I'm like, wow. And we just made that connection from then on out.
I wish I could go back in time and meet the Jamie Vendera that told people no.
I don't remember that.
You tell people, no, it's not working. Sorry,
now I'm just like,
on.
yeah, okay. By the way, I don't know. We have this conversation quite a bit. You told me yes. I'm like, I kind of changed my mind. So, we're getting ahead of ourselves. So we're talking about you did interior design for me. So that is for your company, Scribe Freelance. So what is Scribe Freelance?
Scribe Freelance is basically a boutique design company. I design interiors for books, in any various genres, and covers, ebooks as well. And basically, I speak to it. I walk it through. So if a client contacts me, a prospective client, we'll basically talk about their actual book. They'll tell me the genre. I want to know exactly the motivation for the book. I want to know if it depends on the genre. If it's fiction, if it's nonfiction, I'll approach it very differently. And I'll basically hear what they have to say. And as they're talking, right, if they send me basically a synopsis or an outline or whatever, or the actual book itself, I can rifle through it. And I basically look for things that speak to a cover. You don't want to give away the story, essentially. You want to actually you don't want to actually put so many things on the cover that it inundates the reader or the end user. So we have to find something that's really relevant, something that sells the product, something that actually speaks to the story itself without giving away plot,
page bait,
spoilers. Yeah. So once we hone that down and I get a feel and a sense for what the book is about and what the main ingredients are, then we can start to, ideate and come up with ideas for presenting on the cover. And the theme for this interview is most likely going to be packaging, right? Because everything boils down to packaging. When you look at a car, when you look at sneakers, you look at anything, buildings, it's all about packaging. Like a car has all of these nuts and bolts inside. You have a frame, you have all these working parts. But if it didn't have a nice glossy exterior, people wouldn't be moved by it. So packaging is everything. And when it comes to packaging, you can package things in all kinds of forms. You can have it look like a Beetle, VW, van, bus, whatever, sports car, SUV. That packaging is what it's all about. And depending on the genre, the package is going to change. So if you write, say, like a Western or a vampire book or a nonfiction book, a travel book, the cover, the interior, the font styling, the everything
Mhm.
has to look a certain way because audiences are expecting a certain kind of package. So,
Yeah, I think some of my favorite books that you've designed for Jamie that I can go through his. I love the shifters, but
Hmm.
Crisis Artifact. I love the front of that one. Of course, Age of the Sigil. Whenever he decides to get that one
I'm
finished.
working on it. I'm working on it. He knows that because I've driven him nuts with the new map.
Yes. Oh yeah. Oh, the
Oh
map
yeah,
was amazing. The map was great. You did a great job on creating this map.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my first foray into like maps, and that's another thing. So before I even approach anything, first I have to have a handle on it. I have to wrap my brain around it. I actually
Hmm.
researched a lot of maps, and I look at different, inspirational avenues to see where I want to take mine. And I saw some maps that I really wasn't moved by. Actually, that Shenner map you sent me, Jamie, I wasn't even rolled over by it. I thought it was cluttered and,
It is.
you
It is.
know,
But because he's written like 30, 40 books, so I just kept getting more and more added to it.
yeah. So you need an atlas. Oh, goodness.
Yeah, and it's funny when he designed this map for me, which I absolutely love it. I know I probably hurt his feelings. He sent me this beautiful map. I was like, that's great. Can't use it because we got to go back like 15 years. Daniel and I had 7-Eleven Press together. So
Hmm.
we conceptualized and wrote all those books together, including Sigil. But it's been over 10 years since we started that. So trying to remember where everything was wasn't easy. And you had designed that. I was like, man, this is not really lining up. But you said maybe you can use it in the future. And I'm looking, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, I can use it for Spitfire. So we get 2 maps out of it. But
Yeah.
the layout, everything you've done, it's perfect. It pulls me into the world. So I'm very, very happy.
Pretty cool.
Yes.
Pretty cool.
So he just mentioned that you have wrote these books, some of these books together, and collaborated, which he's told me that, of course. But for our listeners, talk about you in the writing world. Are you still writing, or are you just kind of focusing on your interior and cover design stuff?
Well, I actually am I'm a full-time writer. I get paid to write every day. I actually work for a company. I'm actually a content marketer or content manager.
Mm-hmm.
So what that is, I work for an insurance agency in New York, and
Oh,
I actually am paid to basically build out their message and their brand. I'm the person responsible for all the blogs, PDF guides, the service pages, the homepage, all the wording on the site. And
yeah.
what that is it basically we're positioning the company as an educator, and we try to take complex insurance policies and so forth and boil it down into simple, palatable articles that can
Things
be
that non-insurance people can read.
yes. And one of the approaches that I have toward that is basically infusing storytelling to everything.
Mm-hmm.
So all the articles are, if I'm talking about a certain policy like auto insurance or a certain angle, I have to actually infuse story into it. This is very interesting because storytelling infuses everything that sells, or everything that moves people. When it goes back
Mm-hmm.
to sitting around fires, telling stories, family, and so forth. It goes back to thousands of years. But so what I do is I write every day, but I also have a company that I started called Unique Coloring, and that is based on obscure Black history. So
Oh,
I started a YouTube channel years ago, and I actually wrote a video and narrated it and created the imagery for it about Bessie Coleman, basically. She was an aviator, the first Black American female aviator, I believe, in the United States. So I wrote that video, created it, and it tanked. No viewers, right? So I decided to take that script and turn it into an article because I heard about Medium. And I went on medium.com and I signed up and basically created sort of a magazine there within their platform. And it got a few views. It got like some following. And I put out a bunch more videos. And actually, what I started doing was I actually started writing articles and creating the video from the article instead of doing the reverse. And what happened was I got disillusioned with that whole platform, and I created Unique Coloring itself and started putting out articles and
oh.
coloring pages and books and so forth geared toward Black history. And
So
what
at the end
happened
of
was,
Go
okay,
ahead. No, I was going to say at the end of this video, when I edit, I can put your YouTube link connected to where at the end people can click on it for you.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that unique coloring, everything.
Yeah, so unique coloring, basically when I actually started the website, it started picking up because I left Medium. I was disillusioned with that, didn't care about that platform. And I mean, it works for some people. It didn't work for me. And the actual website started gaining some traction. But what really happened was I started focusing more on the video and creating actual articles on the site, turning those into videos, and they started resonating. Because what I learned was you have to come from like a unique place, come from a special angle that you're not saying something that's being said over and over again, and you're not like this a grain of sand on a beach, essentially. So I started taking art and basically creating videos around that art. So I would kind of animate the art and tell a story using paintings, essentially about Black history, and it started resonating. And I had 12 videos on the site, and it garnered 21,000 subscribers and about 1.7 million views as of right
Wow, that's awesome.
now. Yeah. So it resonates. And this is very obscure. It's history about people who unsung heroes, events that you haven't really heard about. Things like a woman called Bridget Biddy Mason. She was born enslaved, and basically she eventually earned her freedom in California through a court process, and she eventually became the richest landowner in Los Angeles, and she was very wealthy, and she basically employed people, and she was a midwife, things like that, and that really resonated with people, and it's as of right now it has over like 340,000 views, something like that.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Things like that, and I mean, so that's what I did, and it's all about packaging and storytelling. Like I said, so I took these obscure figures. I don't talk about A-listers. One of my rules is I only talk about B-list or C-list characters. So it's like Martin Luther King Jr. or one of these Bridget. Harriet Tubman. They're actually like side characters in my plots. So
Right. Bringing new faces to the stage.
yes, absolutely.
That's awesome. So is this part of, because Jamie put in here an illustrated series? Is this part of that illustrated series? Is that what we're talking about, or is there separate?
I said illustrate. That's what I was talking about.
Okay, that's what
sure.
I was wondering.
They're all illustrated, absolutely.
Right. So I'm assuming this was what he had put on the list. I didn't know if there was a separate thing that you had done that was like that. So that's amazing.
Wow. Yeah, I love that. And I'm thinking, because you've written in a lot of styles. I mean, you've written nonfiction, fiction. I'm kind of curious how many books you've authored, co-authored. What was your favorite? What do you like to write best? I'll kind of roll into one.
I have written several basically fiction books, but I prefer nonfiction, especially historical books, basically. So I'm an independent historian, and I love to just basically go back in time and see things that happened, what basically created the foundation for where we are now, and that's my chief motivation, essentially. So I've written lots of books. I mean, I haven't even counted. Right now, I have about 6 or 7 books through Unique Coloring, and I have a bunch more that I've ghostwritten.
That's awesome.
So,
Jinx.
then go ahead. No, you. So nonfiction, you said, is your favorite genre when it comes to writing. Now let's talk about your book layout and cover stuff. With that, what type of covers do you like to design? Is it more nonfiction you like to design, or do you like to get a little creative with the fiction stuff?
When it comes to covers, I have a lot of different modes, interests. I'm really excited about any direction, honestly, that I can wrap my brain around, like I said. And sometimes I take challenges, like Jamie's map, for instance. I'll take on genres that I've never worked in before if it really interests me, and it piques that curiosity and interest. And I like to challenge myself. So I'll take something on that I've never worked on before, but I'll just use source material. I'll start to do my research and look at other covers in that sphere, and I'll try to aim for something within that genre. So you don't want to create something that sort of alienates the book of a marketplace. You want to actually create something that people will be used to, but also it has to stand out. So it's like a knife edge. You have to be pretty precise about how you're going to approach things.
I never would have thought that map was like your first time diving into that. I mean, it looks like, oh yeah, he's done this like for decades. It was amazing. But something else that grabs me is your interior design. A lot of people don't think about that. You go to Kindle nowadays, there's so many grammatical errors. There's no great layouts. I mean, you're very meticulous. I mean, you even look at the story and like how you design the beginning of each chapter. Everything is so well laid out. So that's why I love looking at Sigil or looking at Crisis Artifact. The way you open each chapter, they're always different. So when you're doing interior design, is it sort of the same process as a cover? Or are you thinking about this font and this chapter heading? Because it does look like a piece of art, the ones you've done for me, which are dozens.
That's a great question, Jamie. And it goes back to what I said about packaging, right? So fonts, you mentioned fonts. Typefaces have a very interesting story. Right? It goes back for, many, many centuries. So back in antiquity, we're talking the classical era, basically ancient Rome, ancient Greece. They used to use a certain font styling. And that font styling became like the benchmark for the realm, essentially. Kings would have sort of a stamp or a seal, and any materials that went out that were written would be in a certain font style, and you would know that it was pompous, it was important. And then when the church gained dominance, essentially, it became like black letter, or what's called Gothic, and that was a religious or legal text, and it would look like it would be very fancy. The Renaissance came, and things started popping off. Essentially, you had the Italian nations. They were actually dabbling in different typefaces. They weren't called fonts then, so it would be more Romanesque. So you like Times New Roman, that type of font. It has serifs, what's called serifs, which are strokes. So you have a T that has the strokes that come down, and the bottom has a leg with two little strokes that come off the side. Those are serif fonts. Became very popular. And then during Francis I's reign, he was a king that basically, he was into the arts, and it exploded under his reign. The Garamond font came out and things like that. I think the guy's name was Claude Garamond. So these fonts were actually named after people who were into the typefaces. Then,
interesting.
Fast forward a little bit, and we come into a different mode of design where the serif became unpopular. So they came out with sans serif fonts, and chief among those was the Helvetica font, and that was invented a while ago. But it was more modern font. And now in design, they get rid of those like serifs, those little strokes, and everything is like kind of straight and boxy. And a guy named Massimo Vignelli, he was an Italian designer. He actually brought Helvetica to prominence. He designed the American Airlines logo, and I grew up in New York City, basically. The subway, he actually was tapped to revolutionize the fonts there. So Helvetica was used on the subway signs, on everything, basically, emblazoned, all the street names. And it's so plain and simple, yet it's so effective.
Helvetica.
Yeah.
I didn't know the history of it.
Yeah, and it's been like used and reused, and a lot of fonts mirror it, and a lot of ads you see, ads all over the place are using, basically sans serif fonts. So typefaces are extremely important as far as creating a mood and an essence and things like that. And when you infuse it on covers and interiors, you literally create sort of the atmosphere that readers can kind of luxuriate in, and you have to create leading between the lines of spacing and nice kerning and things like that. So the design essentially there's been this history, this layer stacked upon, different decades and so forth. And people have come to this point where we are right now, where it's been honed, and every genre has like a different approach. So books that I actually designed, when you have, like Jamie was talking about, having the chapter, essentially the header, or the drop cap font that starts the actual sentence, all of that is important. And how you actually position it, especially for genre fiction, where you a certain styling in different place settings, you have to actually figure out how you want to actually present that to the audience. And it might just be words, bland words on a page, but if you can put artistic bent to it, it lifts it to another level. So.
The books you've designed for me, even way back when, I don't know which one we worked on first, maybe at least your creative mindset, but even Razor Away, all of this stuff. Thinking about the horror books like Long Cold Winter, there's just something about that font and the way you pull me in that I do. I feel like I'm reading, I'm pulled into the horror story, not just from what I'm reading, but just the layouts. And I don't think, like even hearing you tell this history, I don't think even a lot of designers don't even think about that. And I know the people who self-publish and do their own Kindle version, they're not thinking about that. Because I bought many a books and I'm like, man, this font's kind of making me feel weird. I don't like it. It's too in my face, or I can't get through a chapter. It's too much. And it's just not pretty,
Listen, I have a story that will make you cringe, Daniel. So I'm a student at Arizona State University, and I had to take this class it was like a required class in my major, but it was basically you were creating a religious studies PowerPoint. You had to pick a religion, and then you had to kind of like do a PowerPoint on this religion, and everything. I'm all great. You had to be artistic. I'm like, I'm loving this. I love doing these kind of things and doing layouts and doing the fonts, except for the professor required you to use Comic Sans. See? You're like, what the flip?
I'm like, boom.
Yeah, Jamie's like, I don't know what you're talking about. What is that? Is that what Archie said in the
that
comic?
Adam Sandler?
I was like, what kind of professor requires Comic Sans for a PowerPoint? Everything I was doing in all seriousness looked stupid. Oh my gosh. So anyways, yeah, font is everything.
It is. And overused fonts, like there's a certain no in design. Like you never put out a book in Times New Roman. You would never put out a book in comics, things like that. Some fonts have been like sort of, if you're a newbie and you could spot a font that's been overused, you'll know like that person has no pedigree essentially.
Well, yeah, and you want readers to be able to read, and you don't want the font so busy that you get distracted by the font. I mean, there has to be a fluid, way of reading as well at the same time.
And I would say, if you're a self-published author, I would say rather than design your own book, you should probably seek out someone who's done that. Look at samples.
Yeah, and so that is actually a question. So like, and we've talked about this previously. When we're talking to our writers on here, it's not just, hey, go get published with us. Hey, don't always, whatever. We're not trying to just sell ourselves. We talk to people who want to self-publish, people who want to go to hybrid or, indie, or people that are seeking to wait for traditional. But we always state, you need an editor and you need someone to do your layout, and you probably should find someone. I mean, and some people are artistic. You should probably find someone to do your cover, because there are certain criteria. So with that said, for anybody listening, like, well, I'm artistic, but what are the criteria they have to meet to do a cover for Kindle and for layout for print?
Kindle is you could pretty much put anything on Kindle, and there is a stigma with self-publishing, and it goes back a long ways. Like you have everyone and their grandmother publishing now,
right.
Thousands of books come out every day. That has kind of saturated the market, and it's created a low bar of entry. But a lot of those books don't sell. They just sit there and they just clutter up the place. But if you really want to have a book stand out on Kindle, the ideal thing to do is have a book that looks great as a small thumbnail, because that's all that's happened on the product pages and on those Amazon pages. They're basically small. So the books that stand out most are the ones that have sort of beefy fonts and simple cover elements, not too much stuff going on. Because the smaller it is, the details get lost. So that's one benchmark. And for interiors, your interiors should look like they came from one of the big five, honestly. And if you look at any book, you flip through any book from Macmillan, Penguin Random House, whatever, you'll see that they follow a certain style. So the actual lines are not close together. The fonts are evenly spaced and nice, and they're not too fat. Unless there's a criteria for large print, then you want like kind of tall, fat, beefy fonts. But for standard fare, it has to be a certain look, and you have to have something hanging around margins and so forth. It can't be all butting against the after it's cropped, because you have to account for trim and bleed. So when a book is actually finally cropped, it has to look good and balanced, and it has to feel good on the eye. You shouldn't be thinking about it. You should be getting lost in the actual material. So if you're looking at fonts and getting distracted by something that's on that page other than the story, the designer hasn't done their job, basically.
Right. I've said this before to people that I love to go to the bookstore and look at covers and just see what stands out, and then I will open books, and there's been books before when I'll open, I'm like, you can tell they didn't have a good designer inside because it's not laid out properly. It's weird when you become an author and you've experienced certain things and you're like, oh yeah, this isn't great. But I'm to the other person, they probably wouldn't notice it, but they probably didn't even realize it may be the font that's keeping them from flowing in the storyline.
You're right. And
You know
like you
how
said about, go ahead, yeah, James.
I was gonna say, how the squirrel came by him, ADHD. You know how I know I got a good designer, right? Because he designed that book cover.
Yeah.
Yes, that's one of Daniel's. All right, I'm back on topic.
Sure. Yeah, so if you say you go to bookstores and you browse covers,
Mm-hmm.
I do that too, and I look at covers on Amazon. I'm constantly.
Mm-hmm.
You notice like every 5 years or so, there's trends. Like covers go through these amalgamations. Like right now, the real cool thing that people are doing are experimenting with text places. Like, so say like the Dark Waters, it'll be like the Dark Waters, and the author's name is lost somewhere in a puzzle. And it's like they're doing all kinds of stuff now. And it's many times a cover won't even have any realistic imagery. It'll just be this gradient or these water droplets, nothing to do with the story or the title at all. So there's experimentation. There's a lot of that going on. Genre fiction is notorious for that.
So
when it comes to travel books, that's different.
Yeah. So like that's one of the things that my youngest, she'll read 2 novels within a 48-hour period, just easy. And so we're always going to the bookstore. And recently she's been reading the Mortal Instruments series, and there's 70,000 books in that thing. I feel like there's so many, but she has been buying them 2 at a time. And as she stacks them, we went in her room and we're like, look, you can see the side of the spine creates one cohesive picture. I love that. When you have a series and there's that whole that's brilliant. When you're designing a cover that wraps to where when you put them all together as a series, you see a whole nother picture. But at the same time, we were going through the aisles, and a lot of times people are trying to recreate that Twilight effect, where when she came out with the kind of the different versions where she had the chess piece or she had the apple, it was just one focal point in the book, not even a main point. Like the apple was a small part of Twilight, but the apple, and then there's a small part of this, and there's a small part of that, just that single item that they focus on, and then there's the book. People do that, and I'm like, yeah, but you're not Twilight. You're trying to be Twilight. You're not really standing out. I see you, but at the same time, are you that? Yeah. People do that as well. They try to mimic that, I find. There's a lot of that going on.
Well, that's the same thing with how he said it's oversaturated on Kindle, because when him and I were writing together, it was starting to do fairly well. Then everybody, and it was like the Twilight, the 50 Shades of Grey, so everybody was copying those stories and putting them out, and there was no quality control. Nobody was reading, nobody was editing, nobody was developing decent covers. So, and that's just the society we live in. That's just what people are going to do, regardless.
Or you may have people editing and they're just making it like that stuff. We talked to that one author. Well, I don't want to say their particular name. We had someone on who draws and does things like that, but they had an agent who didn't want to sell their stuff because it wasn't trending. But their stuff is trending, but the person who's their agent doesn't realize it is a trend. So sometimes you stick so close to the trend that you don't realize that you're getting lost in the trend.
Yeah,
especially with book covers.
Well, that's the problem with what I call suit. Right?
You call them what?
I call them suits. The people who SUITS, the people who are basically in back rooms and basically boardrooms deciding on things that happen on the street. They have no boots on the ground, but in their head and in their meetings, they're totally disconnected from what's happening in reality. And they make these decisions based on things that they're seeing, that the things that they're actually seeing, these trends. By the time they're seeing it, it's already too late because the
Yep.
people are tapped into something completely different. Right? Trends are they're just what they are. They come and they go. And if people are riding a trend, chances are that thing is about to go out of fashion or it's about to switch or something else is going to pop off. And usually people, the readers, the viewers, the audience, the end users, they're the ones who decide what is going to be the next trend, essentially. And they're always looking for something new. They're always looking for something original. So in order the best agents, the best people who are managers or who are the gatekeepers are the ones who can spot the next big thing.
Yeah.
And they kind of usher it in and also steer it, right? But that comes from really creative people who are tapped into something that the audiences want to actually devour, essentially.
So Karisa stuck, and I know why she did this. She stuck a little question on here that you didn't see because we have opposing opinions about this. Just remember, hold on, Daniel. I'm sending you a message. Just remember, I love you. I've known you longer than Karisa has.
What?
Do you believe in writer's block?
Do I believe in writer's block? Do I believe in writer's block? I think that's a subjective question. It depends on the writer. Everybody will have a different answer for that.
You know he did that because he's because
he's not sure how this is going to go.
Now, seriously, there are two people who you can ask people in the room, do they believe in that or do they suffer from that? It's actually subjective. It's not an objective thing. And a lot of that is, that's true of anything creative. For me, I can't afford writer's block. So I don't go through it.
Wait, Jamie. He said he can't afford writer's block, meaning he's putting it into the universe that exists. He just can't afford to be in that mindset.
Yeah. To me, writer's block don't exist. You're either bored or you're excited. And Daniel see me when I'm excited. I'm rarely bored. I'll call him. Okay, this is what happens. He's like, just put it down on paper.
You're a unique breed, Jamie. You're an original kind of guy. Your brain is full of all kinds. Actually, I would say your brain is full, but it constantly overflows because new ideas keep coming. They pour in, and you can't get writer's block because your ideas are ahead of how fast you can write. So
yeah.
That's the difference between you and other people. Essentially, I think you're steeped in the stuff that you know. The one thing about you, and this is one of the hallmarks that I actually tell my people that I talk to, clients, things like that. You if you write what you know, if you write from a place of experience, you will have no end of ideas, right? But people who really try to write things that they're not familiar with, that's when they get stuck, right? Like you are steeped in the stuff that you write because you've read and devoured so much of it. It's as though you're born into that world, right?
Yeah, but it was you that really mentored me in that, because if you remember, it's been like 08, 07, 08, and you're like, hey, get Netflix. Now you don't have to order the CDs. You can do it online. And if you want to watch all these series, and I even remember Order of 5, I think we were writing, and we were getting and having conversations on Skype. And then one day he's like, dude, I can't sit here and write it all. And it was the best thing you could ever told me. So I can't write it. You're going to have to leap. You have to trust yourself and just start writing, because it's going to take us hours to do this. And I was like, okay. And I went at it. And then, of course, we had Rich Dalglish. And along the ways, I picked up things from him. And that's another subject. We talked about that in our other interview. But I've learned from both of you. And I think that's what helped me to really let these ideas start pouring out, being immersed in it and not worrying about the perfect sentence or whatever, just letting it flow.
Yeah, but the genre itself, the things that you were interested in are things that you were steeped in, and that's important. That's like imagine you're reading one thing, say like you're into architecture, buildings, and so forth, and you've been studying it, you've been looking at Gothic, you've been looking at Art Deco, you just know all this stuff backwards and forwards, and then because you've read something that's sort of outside of your zone, right, your area of influence, like maybe it's mountains. And all of a sudden you want to write about mountains. But now you have to do all this research and all this backfilling to try and get into that. And you love these writers because they elucidate. They actually just frame these stories and narratives about mountains that really inspire you. But architecture, but you're not reading that stuff like on a daily, trying to like say, you know what, I'm going to hone this. So when you focus on mountains, you're basically now having to rebuild a whole persona within yourself and a knowledge base. And it's going to be a struggle, and you will experience writer's block, right?
Oh, because it
And you,
exists.
right? Because people are actually
I
trying
just
to
edit that
pull
part out
off
because you don't
practice.
count. No, tease.
But if you write about what you know and love and things that you are immersed in, the
Mm-hmm.
ideas constantly flow. And
Well,
you, I mean, literally, yeah.
you know, that's kind of the Kindle problem because it's like, oh, 50 Shades of Grey. I've been writing children's books, but that's really big. Let me write, erotica. And you've never
Yep.
written there. You're not going to be convincing.
Okay, you don't know that somebody who writes children's books doesn't have some kind of dominatrix room in their bedroom.
Well, but that's if they do, then that's one of their interests. That's what he's talking
Yeah,
about.
you just because you write children's books doesn't mean that you don't have a plethora of knowledge about leather. I'm kidding.
And that may work in that situation, but you do got to be in that world, or like you said, you're starting from scratch and trying to
I
figure
would
this out.
have to agree wholeheartedly with what Daniel just said, because I feel like when I wrote Crystal Gate and Four Rivers and then Before the World Was Lost, those are my realm. Those are my brain. Those are how I can just make that stuff, flow. But I'm writing a serial killer novel now based on what my kiddo had given me like 10 years ago. And that's not my realm. So having to get the tropes that are in that genre, you have to be like, okay, how does this work? How would the legal system work? What would a cop do? And you want it to stand out or whatever. So I've done a lot of like research in a sense, from like the legal point of view I have a friend who's a cop. Like, hey, how would this work? What would be the line of chain of command here? How would this work? So that's been something new for me because I'm like, I don't know, I don't get that wrong and be like just like any other TV show. So yeah, I feel like you have to rebuild your brain vault for that new genre you're writing in.
Absolutely.
And it does make me get stuck.
Memoirs of a Geisha took like 10 years to write because he literally had to steep himself in that world. He had to actually go to the country, learn the language, learn all the history. So not to say that you can't write outside of your wheelhouse. It's just going to be a heavy lift. But the best actual products are the ones that are labored over. Not too intensively, honestly. You have to learn when to walk away, because it's never fully done. And artists know that. Any great masterpiece, we can look at masterpieces. If you ask the artists if they were alive, they'd be like, "There's so many flaws in there, and it never got to the level that I wanted to, but I just had to walk away at some point." So that's also important.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, Daniel, we send, for those listening, any client that comes to us, we actually send to Daniel. He does all our interior design. He does all my fiction cover designs. And, if you call us, we're going to say, hey, get Rich Dalglish to edit your book, have a scribe freelance and take care of everything else. But for those listening who aren't coming through us, how do they find you? Anything we can talk about, to find your coloring book, your illustrated books, your services. We just want to make sure they can reach out to you.
Scribefreelance.com. That's my design arm. And if you're interested in some history, American history, Black history, some very eye-opening stuff, uniquecoloring.com. And there's some interactive books on there that people can actually, like activity books and so forth, that has like crossword puzzles and all that good stuff. So those are the two avenues.
All right. Is there anything that you would like to share with our listeners, like a tip or something, like, as like an aspiring writer or maybe even somebody in this new realm of writing?
Yeah, I would say building an audience is very important. And many times you write a book and you're excited to have it come out, right? And you labor over it for a while. You're writing it. You're in your underwear and at night, wee hours. You get it edited. You have the book design. You pay all this money to actually have it become a product, right? This packaging. The packaging is there, and then you present it to the world, and it's crickets. Like nobody's buying it. Nobody's seeing it. Right. And then some people actually spend a lot of marketing dollars and they put that behind the book, whether it's ads, whether it's Facebook ads, things like that, print ads, radio, whatever. That all of that is actually sort of like fading away as well. Not fading away, but they're becoming less effective because it's so saturated. So the real answer is building an audience, right? And content marketing is a very key component of that. It's what I do every day. It's what I get paid to do, and it's super. And what that is basically creating content that not only legitimizes you, it creates this authority you're building basically by essentially putting your stuff out there in an accessible way.
We had this conversation like months ago. You told me, he's like, Jamie, you need to be doing a blog. You need to be more involved in that. And I wholeheartedly agree. But, I was like, woo, I just remembered as you're sharing. So that's kind of what we're doing here. But yes, you're right. Yeah. I need to share our adventures of writing and how the story is unfolding, which I'm going to do that with Sigil with every step as we do it. So
that's very nice.
Great. My brain is live. I'm like, Chris, I'm doing some work here. Awesome.
Yeah, it's very important.
Awesome. Thank you for that tip. All right. Thank you, Daniel, for coming on and making time for us this morning. For our listeners, as always, we really appreciate you listening. And if you would like to share us, or if you'd like to find other ways to follow us, you can go to alwayswritepodcast.com. You can click on those little icons. They'll take you to all of our social media and take you to other listening platforms. Also, if you'd like to reach out to us, if you have a question or something you'd like us to forward to Daniel, you can email us at alwayswritepodcast@gmail.com, and we can forward that, or we can answer any email questions that you have. And is there anything you'd like to add, Jamie?
This is just one of my favorite episodes. I'm like, I really miss this guy. There's nothing I want to add. Go to scribefreelance.com. Check out his work. You go to Vendera Publishing, click on 711 Press. You can see tons of covers that he's developed for me. And if you own any of our Kindle books, then you already know his work. He's seen his interior design. And I will praise this man forever, because when I started my publishing journey, he really saved me. No lie, it was, and we were talking the other day. I was like, I miss you. I'm so glad you're coming on. You don't know what you mean to me. He's like, same, because we were really tight. But if you want that really great product, which is your cover and your interior, invest. Spend the time and invest. Don't try to do it on your own and throw it on Kindle. Take the time. Check out Scribe Freelance, and you will not be disappointed.
I will add, if you are looking for a publisher who will literally let you do what you do and will be behind your product and will believe in you and actually let you shine, and not kind of like micromanage and to give you a cover that doesn't work, or give you an interior that you don't care about, or you will have creative control, Vendera Publishing is the way to go.
All right. So thank you for listening. I'm author Karisa DeLay.
And I'm author Jamie Vendera, and we will see you in the next podcast.